Hello, promoters, and welcome to Roll Up, the official Phil Singer Games podcast. I'm your co-host, Sam Fain, and I am joined, of course, by Mike Molesky and Todd Dorschel. Todd, how are you doing this week?
Doing great. Good to see you. Good to see everybody. Hope, and I guess everybody can see us, huh?
That's right. How about that? We're coming to you not quite live on YouTube, as well, of course, as your regular podcast providers, audio only. But we decided it was time to move over to the video realm. So you'll be seeing our faces, for better or for worse. Along with other content. This week is just kind of our trial run. So you're not getting any bells or whistles or anything special. You're literally just going to see us. And then we also have our James Mitchell interview from Galacticon, which we will be dropping in as the main event tonight. And you'll get to see the video for that over on YouTube. So if you were unable to join, if you didn't get to see it and you'd like to see James Mitchell's face, this is an opportunity to do that as well as watch us as we fumble our way through another episode of Roll Up. People who don't fumble, however, Mike Molesky, how are you?
Well, I'm great, Sam. But now I can't give you those hand signals that I love giving you in the video right now.
The single-digit hand signal.
I didn't say that.
No, he would never.
Can't prove anything. There's no video evidence.
That's right. Well, you know what? It has been an interesting week. Last week, of course, we kind of went long. I think there was a lot to talk about and digest when it came to all the changes in WWE. Now that we've sort of been through that, and, we certainly probably have some thoughts and feelings that we can kind of touch base on briefly. But
good thing it was a short episode.
Yeah, exactly.
We planned on a short episode, everybody. So it's a good thing we didn't plan on a long one. It would have been really painful.
It would have been something else. But of course, we also had the Tom Filsinger interview from Galacticon in there as well, which I hope people enjoyed. I know that, based on some of the comments on the board, people did like the chance to listen back to it, especially now that they've had 2138 in their hands for a while. So I think, for this particular episode, we wanted to touch on a couple of things that we're sort of planning on, maybe tentatively, some things that maybe not so tentative that we are going to go full throttle with, engage some interest. Todd, why don't you talk about what you got brewing over there?
Well, first of all, I do want to mention, normally in this part of the episode, we kind of talk about teasers. We'll say that will begin next week. Will be the kickoff of the fall teaser season, starting with some Champions of the Galaxy news next Monday, the 15th. So,
yeah. It's kind of crazy to think it's already time again, and yet it has been quite a while since we've had some teasers.
We've had a number of weeks, about a month off or so of teasers there, but we're getting started and just kind of that now's the right time to start going ahead with that. So as far as other things going on, one of the ideas, so kind of on the Uncharted Territories podcast, they were kind of talking about their upcoming draft that they're going to do, and of course they reached out to me. I'll be on there in a couple of weeks. Working with them, doing their 2022 Legends draft. Got me kind of thinking, with it being drafting season for fantasy football leagues and, fantasy type stuff, got me thinking, well, here's a good time to bring back an idea that I had done maybe a couple decades ago, and that is a Champions of the Galaxy fantasy league. So this is a concept where, a bunch of promoters get together, we kind of choose out different guys and with a, standard draft format, and then go ahead and match up against each other over the course of a number of weeks with different individual matchups, whether it be, singles and tag. And over the course of the number of weeks, we, who see who the best teams are and then have a championship game. So this is, again, something I did, probably say a couple of decades ago, first starting on an Angel Fire site, if you remember that place, But I thought, with our platform here with Roll Up, it'd be fun to kind of have a live draft here as one of the episodes. We can have everybody in to do that draft, and then maybe play out the championship live at either on a Roll Up or maybe a Phil Singer Games night where we can kind of capture the video and maybe put it on a Roll Up too. So that's kind of the idea at this point. Guys, any thoughts on that?
So basically, people would have the opportunity to draft like 4 wrestlers from 2087 through 2093, right? Mm-hmm. They do like a main eventer, maybe they're kind of their mid-level guy, and then a tag team, right?
Right, and they say we might even do. We'll announce more formal rules later on. There might be things where you maybe have a bench guy as well if you kind of want to substitute around,
Sure.
kind of play around with lineups or pick up a free agent. Maybe even things where if the match ends in the double, we might roll on the feud chart to kind of see if there's an injury going on. Things like that. Kind of throw a couple of wrinkles into the equation.
That's great. That's fantastic. And obviously we want to hear from promoters, right? We want,
Yeah.
input on the board. So, feel free to let us know what your thoughts are, and we're going to be shaping this thing kind of as we go along. Nothing's set in stone just yet.
Yeah, and we can, we'll discuss some more formal rules later. But if you're interested in this, obviously we would want to be playing this out over COTG Online. We you probably have to be doing the matchups yourselves, in between each matchups there. Maybe we'll have a key matchup each week we might feature, something like that. Definitely the championship, I can help to run that. But we might have everybody kind of run their own matches. If you don't have access to all the cards, for those who are maybe participating in the league, we can make sure you have access to everything you need with all the reimagined sets. The era that we're looking at again is 2093 to 2087 to 2093. So probably coincide. We'll do the draft kind of the beginning of September, and then kick things off when the new War Games Reimagined set comes to online.
Very cool. Very cool. Mike, what are your thoughts about all this?
I think it's fantastic. I mean, it's a good opportunity to use some of these cards. I think, it's a lot of the cards most of us were brought into the game on. So it's neat to kind of, have this chance. And I think it's fun, one of the great things that, has come out of the last couple of years is we've gotten a lot more like interactive stuff that we've been doing, to keep bringing the community together socially. And I think this is just another neat little thing we can do. Hopefully it entertains everybody who's watching and listening, and the people who get to do it, hopefully they enjoy it too. So I think it's always it's one of the neat things about the cons, like Galacticon, having that, as you said, Sam, the first time you ever played with somebody.
Right.
You don't need to talk about playing with yourself or anything, but it's first time you got to play with another person, and that's awesome, right? And so this is another opportunity for folks. Maybe you can't do it in person, but you can play against somebody online, and I think that'll be fun.
I agree. I also think it's a neat way to, kind of maybe raise the stakes a little bit for the Phil Singer Games Night, which have been, fairly informal and a lot of fun and a lot of enjoyable conversation and people kind of, playing matches and calling people out on the boards, which is awesome. But this is, I think, a great way to, to put something a little bit more, official in the brew and be able to have matches that might have a little more meaning behind them. And I don't know. I think it's a really cool idea. And like you said, Todd, it's the perfect time of year, and if it's successful, it can be the first of many. Starting off, of course, 2087 to 2093, but maybe next time it's it's Legends, or maybe next time it's FTR, or maybe next time it's Centra, or maybe next time it's Sudden Death Era, or something like that. You never know.
Right? I mean, there's lots of possibilities. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Do just do Chikara, just do Evolve, just that sort of stuff would be a lot of fun. Will there be prizes?
Yeah, I think we'll definitely have some prizes there.
You mean the unending admiration of your fellow promoters isn't enough?
I mean, well, Troy won the Galacticon tournament. I don't think he has much unending admiration, so it doesn't always work out that way.
Don't cheat, I mean, that's kind of how. I mean, it's once you go heel, it's hard to go face.
Yeah. These allegations. No, I think it'll be a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to seeing what other promoters say. Do you have a number in mind for do you want to have like a cutoff?
Ideally, I think 8 people would be good. Then everybody can kind of get matched up against everybody else. So over the course of 7 weeks, we kind of have something there, and then the top 2 teams would face off in a championship game that we would broadcast. In some type of online forum, get everybody in to participate.
Yeah, we could do another live episode like we did for the.
This is the another live episode would be fantastic for sure.
Yeah, that'd be absolutely cool. I like it, and I think it'll be a lot of fun. I'll just stand on the sidelines and watch. But
wouldn't it be great if it was like Star Warrior versus Thanatos in the final?
Yeah,
like that.
Absolutely.
We could ask Orange Cassidy and Chuck Taylor to come in.
Whatever happened to those guys? Are they busy?
I'm just spitballing. I heard they got another job somewhere.
Okay.
Unbelievable. Speaking of other jobs, I will have to say we spoke last week, of course, about WWE and how after one episode of Raw and some interesting stuff happening on SummerSlam, it seemed like they were really changing course in some dramatic ways and some ways that were certainly more pleasing to me, seemed to be more pleasing to a lot of people, especially kind of old school wrestling fans. I would say, just again to keep it short, that has continued. This past Monday in particular, I thought they did a fantastic job of kind of keeping that same momentum going, focusing on the wrestling, having some really great matches on TV, which was fantastic, telling some cool stories. SmackDown, I felt like might not have been quite on par with what we got from Raw yesterday and last week, but it was certainly a different direction, and seeing like the return of Karrion Kross and Scarlett, and inserting him immediately into like this main event feud with Drew McIntyre and Roman Reigns was pretty cool as well. The other thing that I will add is that I do feel like AEW for Dynamite in particular stepped things up as well. I thought Dynamite was superb. I didn't get a chance to see all of Battle of the Belts, but holy mackerel, Claudio and Takeshita was phenomenal. Just a hell of a match. And I think it's for someone like me who I'm a little hot and cold on Claudio sometimes. I'll be completely honest. Like even during his WWE days, there were so many people talking about like, he should be this, he should be that. And there were times when I was kind of like, I don't know if he should, maybe some of the criticism he gets is valid. But that match without a doubt was just everything that I feel like he needs to do on a regular basis. So it's cool, it feels like maybe, this will not allow AEW to kind of rest on their laurels as being the alternative product, right? Like now they're sort of like, oh, we better step this up because WWE is going to do what we've been doing with their top caliber talent. There's no denying the talent that they have. So it's just a cool situation for wrestling fans. Mike, any thoughts to add to that?
Well, I think, we're going to tend to overreact to everything now, right? I mean, I think that, there was stuff that was good going on with WWE before, Vince left. There was. And Vince brought a lot of us the wrestling that we're now criticizing WWE for not having enough of, right? Stuff that from the 80s, right? That we grew up on. So I think that, some of it's going to be, we're paying attention now. And I think a lot of people are giving it another chance. And so I think there's going to be some things that are improved. There may be some things that aren't improved that going forward. I don't know. Right. But I think that right now people are going to give it another chance simply because there's been a change at the top and they want to see what happens. And they're looking at it with an open mind and not saying, this is Vince's stuff, so I obviously can't like it, right? I mean, now it's going to be, they're just going to give the product a chance. I mean, you were even talking about the main event last week for SummerSlam that, Michael Hayes is still working there, right? I mean, you threw that in. I mean, it's like, there's not a lot of changes at WWF if you look at it in terms of the personnel running things. Hunter had been around a lot. I mean, he'd been away since September-ish.
I think so.
But he's back, right? But a lot of the other guys are still and gals are still the same people. So I think you're going to see incremental changes. You're going to continue to see like certain talent getting a different look, Cross coming back and that kind of thing. Potentially, Sasha Banks and all that stuff going on. But I think that for the most part, there's still going to be a lot of the same people making the same calls. It's just that you're going to see little tweaks that are going to give it a different feel. But look, it's good for wrestling. I think that people are excited, that people are interested, and we'll see what happens. And like you said, Sam, I think that it motivated AEW to maybe, step up their game. We'll see if they can, figure out this Ring of Honor thing and how it all fits together. I think that's like I said last week, that's the biggest challenge I think they have. But it's been a good couple weeks for wrestling in terms of if you're a fan.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
completely agree, and that's a really good point you make too about there are obviously a lot of people that are still there that have been instilled and working under Vince and working under that product, and I think that that there will be incremental changes. I think the one positive thing is that for a lot of those people, they're getting the opportunity to maybe do things the way that they had envisioned, because a lot of times you would hear stories about people who were producing matches or doing some of the writing or whatever that Vince would micromanage a lot of that, and so it would turn something that they had been working on into something else. We have a upset toddler here in the house. But no, I mean, I think that those are really great points. And again, yeah, it's just it's a cool time to be a wrestling fan, I think, because there's just some really cool stuff out there. Todd, what are your thoughts on all of it?
Yeah, so overall, I've definitely been enjoying some of the WWE. I've been watching, which I haven't been doing for quite a while. The couple of things I definitely like is kind of the ongoing storytelling throughout the episode. So like having the little bits, the pieces that kind of build into matches and segments later on. Little things happening in the background, like last night on Raw with kind of everything backstage in the garage. I thought that was a nice little twist and kind of paying off at the end with Dexter Loomis kind of appearing out in the crowd and whatnot. So I kind of like that they're adding other things that, rewards you for kind of paying attention and kind of watching along as you're going along. I think that's been really good.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's kind of it goes hand in hand, I think, with what I was saying last week about how they, the women's storyline in particular, played out so well over the course of the episode, and it just ran through the entire episode. And I really like the way that they did that. And I think it's interesting to me because it takes advantage of the 3-hour format. It takes advantage of the fact that we've got all this time in a way that I don't know that they've always done. So. It's pretty.
This time it was like kind of ongoing stories with like the Mysterio, Mysterio Edge stuff kind of played out in different parts, and then the the Miz and AJ Styles kind of having different things throughout the episode too, and kind of building to why that main event happened later on. So
right,
yeah. And then AEW this, last week, I thought last week's show was definitely an improvement over where they've been, and definitely building to a really huge show this week. With the coffin match, with the with the title match, they're definitely trying to pull out all the big guns there. We'll see what happens with this trios tournament. I know we kind of talked a couple weeks ago about Omega with the Bucks, so it looks like they're going with Hangman and the Bucks for now. But I gotta think Omega's waiting in the wings for sure.
I almost feel like they're gonna like try and take out Hangman or something before the tournament.
It's possible.
Like that's
very
right.
possible.
That's you just sort of you could see that, right? The undisputed elite or whatever they're gonna call themselves coming out of this. They jump them, right? And so okay, now you the Bucks, now you got nobody
with you, and
right. They got you're by yourselves. You can't be in the tournament, and then Kenny Omega comes out to the huge pop. Right.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, I think that the fact that, that they turned the Bucks face like hot on the heels of what I was saying last week, I think that's just that's the way to go. And like you said, I mean, I don't think there's any way for Kenny to not come back, to a face reaction. Especially when you look at the way that they left things, in his final match with Hangman. Like, it definitely seemed as though there was enough respect shown, by the time everything was said and done to have that. And I think that if Hangman gets taken out, it keeps that story going, which has been kind of the original story, right? Like, Hangman Page is our guy. He's the one that's gonna get us through all of this and kind of be the big through line. That pulls together all these stories with the elite, and even with CM Punk and and everything else that's happened, and his his entire tenures, I think has been incredibly important to the overall storyline of AEW. So it's cool. I'm glad to see that things are seemingly kind of settling a bit after the War of the World stuff, and we've got we've got more, I think, of that feel back overall of AEW, as opposed to things maybe feeling a little disjointed or a little off, which is nice. So
so between the Forbidden Door and the tournaments, a couple of the stories just weren't the same for a while. So now it's building into All Out. It's really kind of starting to kick off now. So we'll see how that goes. Hopefully it'll be a really good card in September. Yeah, it's gonna be a
Yeah.
huge weekend there because that's also the WWE's next pay-per-view is the day before.
Yeah.
So like there's a lot going on for Labor Day weekend for sure.
Yeah, without a doubt. I don't know how much, if anything, I'll be able to attend because you know there's all sorts of stuff going on here, but we'll see what happens. Maybe I'll get to at least a show.
One other WWE note, I don't know if we talked about it last week, did we talk about the location for WrestleMania 2024 at all yet?
I don't think we did. No.
Yeah, so that they did it now. It's very interesting that it will be in Philadelphia
Yeah.
in 2024, which is definitely a lot easier, for a couple of us on the podcast here to travel to than the last couple of locales for sure. So I think that'll be a good time.
I think you earned it, Todd. I think you earned a shorter trip after Galacticon in Chicago.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah,
more than I can drive to.
Honestly, between Galacticon in Chicago and then doing the Hall of Fame in Waterloo, like you logged some miles. I
got my little Google summary on my thing of all the places you've been this month. And I'm like, oh, okay, I did do a lot.
I did eat pizza there. Yeah, well, there'll be in Los Angeles next year, which may or may not be headlined by Rock and Roman. We'll see what happens. I think The Rock can kind of do whatever he wants to do, but at the same time, there's a lot of people that he has to pay to insure him on movie sets, and I know they weren't too happy the last time he got hurt in the match with John Cena. So who knows what we'll get out of that? But I think it could be it could be something interesting, something special. And then Philadelphia, it's an interesting choice. We'll see.
I wasn't sure if they make it back there. I mean, they don't do too many in the kind of the northern cities that don't have domes anymore. I mean, they did do MetLife Stadium a couple times, but they haven't really done any other ones in the Northeast. The last time Boston and Philly was WrestleMania 14-15, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think they've been in the Northeast except for MetLife Stadium.
They did two in MetLife, right?
They did two in MetLife, 29 and 35 they did in MetLife. 20 they did at MSG. But I don't think they've done any of the other ones in the Northeast, outside of those ones since, in like 20 years. So I'm glad it's going to be in Philadelphia. I think that's going to be great. I think
big year, fans. A big year.
Big year.
That's right. Well, before we get too far into the weeds, so we've got announcements kicking off next week. We've got the fantasy league that we're kind of proposing. Nothing is set in stone yet, but we certainly want feedback and see if the interest is there to do that, to try to fill it out with 8 total teams, if you will. We've got exciting stuff happening in the wrestling world, which exciting stuff in the wrestling world is always great because let's face it, the more people that are watching wrestling, the more people might be interested in this game, and the more people interested in this game, the bigger and better things that we can do. So hopefully we'll maybe see a little bit of little bump. Who knows? We certainly saw a bump during the pandemic era, but I think there was something else that we were going to talk about.
Well, we can give a little shout outs later on afterwards. Let's stop letting the people wait here. Let's get to James Mitchell.
Let's do it. All right. So this is the James Mitchell interview from Galacticon. Had such a great time getting the opportunity to talk to him. I had been, a fan of his work in the ECW days in particular. We covered quite a bit from Smoky Mountain all the way up until what he's been doing currently with NWA. So hopefully you will enjoy this interview and get some questions answered that you might have had that maybe you didn't even know you had. And we'll be back after the interview is over with some shout outs and maybe a little preview of what's up next. So here we are today. We are joined by none other than the Sinister Minister, Father James Mitchell. How are you doing today, James?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's our pleasure. This is really exciting. Anytime, of course, we get not only someone who's in the game, but certainly a member of the Legends of Wrestling roster. It's always a pleasure to welcome you in and get the opportunity to talk to you. I wanted to start off, just jump right in with the questions. In the bit of research that I was doing, so I didn't just ask you about ECW, which is what I'm most familiar with. I noticed that you trained with Gene Anderson and worked as a wrestler for a while. Can you talk about what it was like to train with Gene and what he was like?
Well, that's kind of gilding the lily a little bit. I didn't wrestle. That's incorrect. That's Wikipedia at its finest. Gene basically, when I was trying to lie, con, and swindle my way into the business, just through a confluence of events, I ran into somebody who knew Gene Anderson and Nelson Royal. And he brought me and a couple of the jabroni guys that I was hanging around with trying to break into the business. I took them up to his camp, which I believe was in Monroe, North Carolina. I can't remember precisely now because it's been a long time. Anyhow, he beat the shit out of my guys. I just made them throw up, just ran them ragged. And then he'd get in the ring and start shooting with them. And I thought I was going to have to get in there and put up with that. Gene kind of took a liking to me. He basically told me, kid, sit down and shut up. He said I'd sent him a promo tape that was homemade in the kitchen, and it was pretty vulgar. And Gene called me up and he said, kid, you got the gift of gab. You'd make a good preacher or a porn star, but you don't know shit about the rest of the business. So that's kind of how I wound up getting invited up there. But no, I came up there a handful of times with a couple of different tag teams that I was fooling around with. And Gene just, he was just like, how do I train a manager? He'd show me stuff not to do. He showed me how to take some basic bumps and stuff like that. But pretty much, he really just wanted me to watch guys getting trained and pay attention to the psychology and stuff. So did that for a little bit, but then moved on and just worked my way up through horrible outlaw mud shows, as Jimmy Cornette calls them.
Well, speaking of Cornette, one of the places that you worked your way into was Smoky Mountain Wrestling.
Yeah.
And we have quite a few fans of Smoky Mountain. One of our guys who works on our Legends team was actually at the fan events that they used to hold, once a year, where all the fans would get to kind of, have a behind the scenes view. So Smoky Mountain holds a special place in a lot of folks' heart, and I would love to hear about your start there, and of course, Prince Karras is at the game as well to team up with you. So talk a little bit about those early days in Smoky Mountain.
Well, I was amazed to get a phone call from Jim Cornette because I had done television. I'd been in the business at that point, maybe 4 years, maybe. But I had done TV for a promotion called South Atlantic Pro Wrestling. It was one of the last territories. And that lasted maybe a month before they went out of business. I mean, I was like on the final month of shows. They'd been around for years. But I sent a tape of that to Cornette and didn't hear from him for about a year. And when he called, I couldn't believe it. I had to keep pinching myself. This is like actually Jim Cornette, on the phone with me. And so the funny thing was, I expected he was going to put me with like an Arn Anderson and Bobby Eaton, a regular wrestler. And, so I'm all nervous and shaky and listen corny. And, I was so full of adrenaline. It was almost like what he was telling me was going in one ear and out the other due to pure nervousness. And I had to do a double take. He goes, you're going to manage Prince Karras. And I was like, okay, that's great. He goes, he's a mummy. And it didn't quite register. And then I thought, oh God, how's this going to work? But, having grown up loving all the classic Universal monsters and whatnot, I figured that would work. And then he also described that he would have me dress up with the Fez, kind of like the Sheik's original manager, Abdullah the Farouk did, or the Grand Wizard, whatever you want to call him. And it was kind of, I'd been doing outlaw shows for years, but it was kind of like getting thrown into the deep end of the swimming pool. Suddenly I was in a place where everybody knew how to work, Yeah. But the crowds were great because they still believed it.
Yeah.
They would fight. Yeah, it was real. They booed where they were supposed to boo. They cheered where they were supposed to cheer. The referees would disqualify you It just felt like the wrestling that I grew up on. And there used to be the road. I had to drive, so I was living in South Carolina, and I'd be, excuse me, driving to Tennessee or Kentucky and West Virginia.
Wow.
And all these places are brutal overnight. You'd have to drive all day to get there and then drive all night to get back just in time to sleep in my car for a half hour and then go back, go to my day gig. But it was a lot of fun. And the Prince Karras thing, he was supposed to get a huge push because that's what Rick Rubin, the owner, wanted. However, Smoky Mountain was so old fashioned that they didn't react. The crowd didn't quite know what to make of Prince Karras. But it was funny with him. He was claustrophobic. So,
I was just going to ask about that.
Yeah, he really was. So when we tape him up, they put that mask on him and tape it up, he'd start getting nervous and having heart palpitations and reaching around in his bag to take an anti-anxiety pill. He'd get really nervous about it. And that outfit never got washed because obviously you had to keep it dirty. So he's triple wrapped up. And I think it was originally like a running suit or something, sweatsuit.
Okay.
And it kept getting taped and retaped, and we kept rolling him around in the dirt and stuff. So basically, imagine maybe he was there 4 months, 5 months, but every time he worked, he couldn't wash it. So it was just like a big, funky, a bag of stink that was on him. And it just got worse all the time, just like a funky mildew kind of smell. Not his fault; he was clean, but it was horrible. That smelled disgusting. But yeah, it was a great learning experience. Learned a lot of stuff, the social pecking order and basically how to behave in a locker room and whatnot, things that didn't happen in the mud shows in the Carolinas. So I was there, I guess, about 9 months, and finally Cornette fired me. I think Paulie Dangerously called me or something and said he heard Smoky Mountain was going out of business because Cornette and his wife were getting a divorce or some shit like that years ago.
Yeah.
And I got all nervous about it. And I called one of his office people, Casey O'Connor, and Casey told me, I would suggest you mind your own business. We're not going out of business. And I proceeded to then call Cornette's direct secretary, Pam, I think was her name, and really pissed her off. I got a classic Jim Cornette promo call about 3 minutes after getting up, maybe 5 minutes after getting off the phone, just like a 20-minute, what damn business is it of yours if I have 3 wives, you son of a... If you've ever heard him go crazy on Vince Russo, else, that was the first blistering promo I ever had cut on me in my life. I was just, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do anything, but I learned my lessons and moved on. But man, that was a great territory, and I highly recommend anybody watching this, if you haven't done so, catch all the Smoky Mountain wrestling you can on YouTube or wherever, if you could buy compilations of it, because it's just like going back and watching that old territory wrestling, like the Crockett's or the Fullers and Knoxville and whatnot. It's a really good product.
Yeah, I completely agree. And like I said, we've got a lot of fans over here, and I'm lucky enough to have a collection of the complete library. And when I first got into Smoky Mountain, I was watching a lot of All Japan, so I was used to these epic longer matches, and I started watching Smoky Mountain, and obviously I grew up on like territory stuff in the 80s, but watching Smoky Mountain, it was just such a huge change of pace for me, because I'd been watching this Japanese wrestling, these longer matches, these guys just beating the snot out of each other, and it took me a while to adjust, but it is such a even the pace of the matches, and I'm curious, talking about that as a manager, working in Smoky Mountain, what did you learn about the pace of matches and when to do things as a manager?
Well, the thing was, I didn't really have to do a lot of that because of the Mummy's gimmick. There was no reason for me to interfere on behalf of a 6'9" mummy or whatever, 7 feet tall, whatever he was supposed to be.
Sure.
So yeah, that was one thing I didn't really get to do. I mean, I was there wasn't a lot for me to do at ringside, given his gimmick. And actually, he didn't wrestle a lot. I think he was on TV maybe 4 times. He was out on the road some. You'd have to go back. I'd have to go back and check it. But the stuff I learned to do properly at ringside came probably more later when I went to WCW.
Okay.
Which we can get to in a minute.
Yeah.
But the big thing I learned in Smoky Mountain was if you got heat, you better watch your back because those people took it seriously. Don't go too close to the railing, unless you want somebody to grab your ponytail and drag you into the crowd. There were some great fights. I saw some girl attack Tammy Sitch one night.
Yeah.
Brian, this is on video somewhere, but girl attacked Tammy, and Brian Lee just grabbed that big old girl, grabbed her by her hair and drug her like a caveman all the way across the floor. And I mean, it was on. It was crazy stuff.
Oh my gosh. So we do have a couple of questions that I want to get to real quick. Ricky asks if you can tell the story of the only time you got censored on Smoky Mountain television.
Okay, this is family friendly or what?
Are there any kids in the room anymore? Yeah. Go ahead. You can cut loose.
Okay, so yeah, obviously what I was doing in Smoky Mountain at the time was like a child trying to see how far I could push, get away with things.
Sure.
The equivalent of the prank call is Mike Hunt there. Page Mike Hunt for me. That's kind of in theory. I mean, in practice, that's kind of what I was doing. But
sure.
Differently with wrestling promos. So he had me cut a promo saying that Prince Karras might be looking for a tag team. And I was just on a rant, and I mentioned Robert Gibson. And I said something like, Robert Gibson, if you get near Prince Karras, he'll pluck out your one good eye and make you give him a wink job. So Cornette called, and I was doing it on commentary, sitting in with Bob Caudle, who was completely, disgusted. But yeah, Cornette called me a few days later, I guess after it edited. He goes, "Congratulations, after a year or whatever, you finally got censored." And what they did is when you listen to it, I'm in my rant, and Robert Gibson, if you touch Prince Karras, beep, and then it goes back to. But I'm surprised they censored that, considering some of the other filth that came out of my mouth. But I guess it just went over their heads, so they didn't know that they should censor it.
Going back briefly to the crowds, you mentioned Smoky Mountain and how into it they were. Was Smoky Mountain the craziest crowds that you ever saw?
Between them and ECW, probably.
Yeah.
They were sort of, it was like a two-headed coin there. One was North crazy, the other one was Southerner crazy.
Yeah. So I do want to get into WCW, and we had a question from Joe, which is kind of a perfect way to get in. But what are some stories about Wrath and Mortis? And Carl Zilla also asked about the Blood Runs Cold angle, and specifically if you thought that I'll kind of paraphrase this, but if you thought that angle was a success or a failure, and if you thought it was a failure, what you think could have been done to improve it.
Well, excuse me. First of all, the Blood Runs Cold thing was Eric Bischoff's creation. He saw the trend coming in kids playing video games like Mortal Kombat and all that becoming a big deal. So he had planned this to be the next big thing. And he'd hired this special effects firm to create these characters, to create the outfits. They brought in a company to do all the lasers and snow for Glacier, and I forget how much they said it cost per episode to do that, but it was something obscene. Like crazy money to do that. Anyhow, I got together because I had been friends with Canyon, who was cast as Mortis, and he went to bat for me, had me do an interview with or send a promo tape to Dallas Page, who then made me completely redo it because he said Eric would hate it, that I sounded too much like a Southern wrestling manager. Page, I guess, is responsible for the putting me on the dark, evil, sinister character path, actually. So, you know, instead of being a loud motor mouth, he had me slow everything down and, you know, do that kind of deal. Anyhow, Bischoff walked over and hired me. What had happened in the meantime, though, they had been paying those guys, Rath and Mortis and Ernest Miller and Glacier, to go to the power plant and practice karate and stuff for like a year. In the meantime, the NWO came along about 6 or 8 months before they unleashed Blood Runs Cold finally. And that pretty much put the kibosh on all the cartoon wrestling type of stuff. However, it was a great time to be in the business because that was the era of the Monday Night Wars. Also, we were the #1 rated cable television program in the country, as I recall, at the time. It was I rode that 83-week wave with Eric. So it was a great featured spot. You know, it was a mid-card act, but we generally, at least for a while, didn't lose on TV. But it was, there was only so far you could go with that because everything around us had changed. Wrestlers that used to have gimmick names were using their street names, you know, and it made us just stick out like a sore thumb. And at some point, I think they, after about the first 9 or 10 months of it, once the new had worn off, they just kind of threw us to the wolves. And, you know, we knew the writing on the wall. Was there anything that could have been done to make it better? Yeah. Don't, you know, push it the way you were supposed to, you know? It was like we were allowed to beat luchadors. We were allowed to beat your guys that were maybe high-end jobbers, the kind of jobbers that won on TV, on and off. But, you know, we weren't getting beyond a certain level. You know, we were stuck there and there was nowhere to go. However, you know, the funny thing is, wrestling nowadays has a lot of that. You know, these promotions, what is it, Pro Wrestling Guerrilla and things like that. There's a big market for that kind of stuff. So in a way, it was kind of 25 years ahead of its time, or 20, because there I mean, a lot of smaller promotions that are doing pretty well feature that kind of stuff, obviously without that kind of production. But we were talking earlier about learning what to do at ringside. You know, going to WCW is a huge jump. I thought Smoky Mountain was a huge, you know, well, it was in orders of magnitude, but WCW now, I've just really hopped into the big leagues. Guys like Pee Wee Anderson and Nick Patrick were real helpful with me, especially like telling me how to work the camera and, you know, where to always, you know, make sure that your face is towards facing the hard camera so they can see you. Don't have your back to it or you're not getting it. That everything was about FaceTime. And he'd teach me which camera to look into and how, you know, there was timing and a way to do things. And another important thing he said was when your guy's going to lose, that's when you're not on camera. Go take yourself out of the frame. You know, look at the monitor up there on the Titantron or whatever you want to call it, and make sure right before your guy takes the 1, 2, 3, you step out of the frame. You know, which made sense. I still do that to this day if I can. But yeah, that really was a learning. You know, learn as you work and go. But I think I had maybe a 2.5, 3 month learning curve when I first got there. Before you know, once you see yourself making stupid mistakes on national TV, you tend to not make them anymore.
I can imagine.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, like when I got there, you know, when guys bang on the mat, I had no idea there was a reason for that. I thought they were just, you know, drawing attention to themselves. I didn't realize, you know, that's a heel's way of fooling the fans into getting into a babyface chant or whatever, you know, during a rest hold. So I would just be sitting there banging on the mat like an idiot and get home and look at it, knew something didn't look right. And then Paige or somebody was like, no, you idiot. You're supposed to do that. You're not supposed to go bang, 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 bang. It should be like 3 things, like boom, 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 so they can chant DDT or whatever, you know? Yeah. So, but that was an incredible time to be in the wrestling business. All the spoils of war, all of God, it was it was crazy, and wrestlers could get away with anything.
Yeah.
And everybody was looked at. Cops would pull you over and let you get off speeding tickets. All you had to do was, keep some merch in your car, keep a handful of autographed photos. Like I had some that I forged of Goldberg and Flair and people like that, completely forged by me. But you get a speeding ticket and as soon as you see the blue light, throw those up on your dash, and they come up and start talking to you and go, hey, can you get me some tickets? Sure. Hey, by the way, give this picture of Ric Flair to your kid or whatever, Good time to be alive.
So, and I'm not looking for any dirt or any salacious stuff unless you want to give it to us. But as far as, the party scene, were there guys in particular that you really enjoyed partying with?
Oh, yeah. Public Enemy. Crazy people.
Yeah.
God, dude, everybody party. Public Enemy were probably the craziest.
Yeah.
Johnny Grunge was not above stealing the production truck, and take it off in the middle of the night to go buy cigarettes or whatever the hell he did. He was insane. Who else was in that crowd that we ran with that was so wild? Louis Spicoli was crazy. Well, actually, a lot of the people who are dead now.
Right. I was just thinking that.
I don't want to be irreverent, but yeah, we ran hard.
Yeah.
We ran real hard, and it's amazing that anybody ever made it to work the next day. Some of them didn't sometimes.
Yeah. So, talking about learning things for the camera, for instance, it seems like performing is something that is kind of just in your blood. And I'm wondering if that's true. Were you always interested in performing one way or another? Not even necessarily with wrestling. Would you ever think about getting into acting? Did you ever, because it seems like you have a good grasp of character, or was that something that you really did work on through the years?
Well, as a little kid, I guess obviously as a little kid, you're not thinking that far ahead about it, but
sure.
When everybody else was on the playground playing Army or whatever, I was out there being the Wolfman and Frankenstein and the Mummy and Dracula. And I could do all, I'd spend hours in the mirror doing all of their faces, so, I guess I was, what do the kids call it these days? Cosplay?
Oh, yeah.
Cosplaying back then. And, I spent some time in music. But yeah, the funny thing is, I enjoy performing, but for the longest time, believe it or not, I was painfully shy. So I remember when I first got into the wrestling business, I'd get nauseous when I'd walk out, when I'd hear a crowd and stuff like that. I don't have any of the problems now, but yeah, I'm pretty much probably a frustrated actor, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
A frustrated, untrained actor. But I enjoy, I'm like all of us in this crazy business. I'm addicted to the roar of the crowd.
Sure. So in WCW, after things kind of cooled off, no pun intended, with Mortis and Wrath and Glacier, you had the opportunity to do sort of a segment on WCW Saturday Night, and I'm curious, what did you think of that? Because obviously you go from being like on Nitro and and having these pay-per-view spots, and now you're on Saturday Night. Not that there wasn't good stuff on Saturday Night, but it's certainly not Nitro. Did you feel like it was an opportunity, or did you kind of look at it as like, okay, I'm just getting pushed off to do this other thing?
Oh, I looked at it as an opportunity, but I'll tell you, as much fun as I had in WCW at that time, I kind of crawl into a fetal position when I look back at my performances there, because that segment I did was, it was like I guess you'd call it an editorial segment, but they had me do it in character.
Yeah.
So that was kind of goofy, I didn't look at it that way at the time. Looking back at it now, I'd immediately turn it off if it pops up somewhere. But I've never been one to whine and complain when given an opportunity. I generally try to catch the ball and run a touchdown, as if I can.
So, kind of transitioning, under that same sentiment into ECW and comparing maybe like Smoky Mountain, WCW, and ECW, did you feel like you were overproduced at any point in any of those? Like, did you get more freedom? I mean, I'm assuming probably ECW, but like, did you feel you had more freedom in one place as opposed to another? And did you ever feel like when people were telling you what to do, did that that rub you the wrong way? Did you want more creative freedom?
WCW, to the degree that they did anything with us, was kind of overproduced. Jim Cornette let me do whatever I wanted to do.
Nice.
Paulie did too. Paulie would give you 2 or 3 sentences off the top of his head and let you run with it. TNA was, I pretty much had freedom to do whatever I wanted to do there too. So I haven't really had a lot of creative oppression, and the way I look, I mean, yes, I've been involved with stuff that I thought was stupid from time to time, but I have, I'm certainly capable of walking away from it if I want to. So I have to shoulder the blame partially. If I'm part of the process or part of the product, I contributed to it too. So, I'm not going to dump all over somebody else's creatives if I took a part in it,
Sure.
Or at least say that I am as guilty as they are of making something suck.
Well, it's something that I certainly didn't think sucked, and I was a big fan of at the time. Was in ECW. Your work with Tajiri and Mikey Whipwreck. Having followed ECW for a few years at that point, and having seen sort of the trajectory of Mikey Whipwreck's career, and then being really into Tajiri when he first debuted. I just thought it was such a unique idea. It was something different for them to do. Talk a little bit about working with them, and I mean, I'm assuming that was probably all Paulie, right? Like that was, he was just like, here, I'm going to put you 3 together. But if it wasn't, like, talk about how that came to be.
That was a series of fortuitous accidents. When I first came in, and I'd been coming in for a few weeks and they weren't paying me. I was just getting on TV because I'd been off WCW TV for 2 years. I was supposed to be involved in an angle with Raven, where I was going to be his therapist that was taking advantage of him. Mikey had also just returned from WCW about that time, and he was kind of paying his penance for having left. Because usually if you left and went to WCW or WWE, when you came back, you were going to do the job on your way in for a while until you regained the love and trust of fans. Mikey was there, and I forget, and it was like he was off camera, and Paulie just had him had us both cackle for no reason at the same time. He stuck us together. It didn't make any sense to me. I'd never met Mikey before this, and Mikey's about my size.
Right.
So I was thinking, man, why are you going to put me with this guy? Who the hell? He doesn't look like a star, I had no idea of his background in ECW and what all he'd done, and meeting Steve Austin and Mick Foley and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But we got along great, and ECW was a place where the partying, partying went on as the show was taking place. So we became fast friends, and the one thing we figured was if we wanted to stand out, because everybody was trying so hard to be hardcore.
Yeah.
I remember Boris Malenko once said, if everybody around you is screaming, you whisper. If everybody whispers, you scream. Well, what would be the most non-hardcore thing to do in a hardcore wrestling promotion? Well, basically have some strange character who looks like he's straight out of a cartoon, kind of like the Great Gazoo used to pop up in the Flintstones or whatever his name was. And so Mikey and I would do these goofy ha-ha cornball promos that you would think on the surface we should have been run out of town, tarred and feathered. And I guess because it was so different, the crowd just reacted, got with us. And I mean, we got over pretty strongly. And anyhow, the Tajiri thing happened by accident. It was like, I forget the reason. they had a face off in the ring for some reason. I think there was a tag team match. Somebody didn't show up. I can't remember. It's been so long now. But I remember at the end of the match, Mikey and Tajiri just completely ad-libbed this thing where they started looking at each other like mimes.
Yeah.
And, like, you're okay with me. And it had not been discussed or anything. They were just doing a little ha-ha in the ring. And the crowd reacted strongly to that. And I think like the next week, or maybe even after that show, Paulie had him start doing promos with us. And, and it was funny because Tajiri didn't speak English unless he was as the joke used to be, Tajiri doesn't speak English unless he's going over. So if he was going to lose, he'd be like, no, not so much. Maybe not so much. If he was winning, yeah, sure, I'm going to give you the tarantula and the spinning back kick, and you're going to lose. Clear as day English. But it was fun to bounce. I mean, it was some of it. I mean, was so damn silly. Yeah. But it was fun. I mean, ECW was wow. That was fun times. That was the ladies were still around in the day back then still. It was just crazy. But yeah, that Tajiri and Mikey had some great matches too, like with the FBI, really strong series matches with them. A lot of fun there. ECW was a different beast, I had to get used to the fact that there were no rules. So that was how can you be a well, actually, I was a baby face when I was there, so it wouldn't have mattered. But how would you be a heel manager?
Right.
The referee lets you do everything in front of him anyway. You don't get arrested, for chairs and tables, and you don't get counted out if you fight up into the crowd for 2.5 minutes all over the arena. So it was just the kind of shit your pants and dive in type of deal. Just like what in Rome do as the Romans do, I guess.
Sure. You mentioned Raven a little bit ago, and obviously you had interactions with Raven in WCW, and then of course later on in TNA as well.
Yeah.
You talk a little bit about Raven and just your working relationship with him, and kind of what you got from him, because he's always talked about as having such a great mind for the business and being somebody who's just a standout performer. So I'm interested to hear kind of your take on your work with him.
Yeah, Raven's a great bunch of guys. The Raven we know now is a far kinder, gentler, sober Raven. The old Raven, actually, I mean, he was funny and very smart, very creative, but he was a bit of a dick back in the day. Had a bit of an attitude. And way back when, he kind of treated the young boys, his bag carriers, like shit. But he got through all that and he changed. But working with him, he's the kind of guy that would call you at 3:00 in the morning. Hey, Vandy, I got an idea. Blah 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 blah. And he loved wrestling. He lived for it. He talked about it. His mind was always spinning. I would say, in my opinion, what made me, after years of being in wrestling, and this is after WCW, after ECW, was when I had to feud with Raven in TNA. That was the first time I felt like when I was cutting promos on somebody that I was sparring with an equal. It wasn't me just cutting a promo on a lower mid-card guy that was beneath me in the pecking order. This is Raven, and he's bringing his A game. Yeah. He laid things out very intricately. His psychology was impeccable. And he really, when he put matches or stories together, he was thinking several chess pieces ahead on the board, so to speak. Yeah. And he'd set things up to where the crowd thought they were going to get one thing, just the way things were set up. Yeah. And he'd pull the rug right out from under, to keep the suspense. And once Raven got clean and sober, then it was a real joy to work with. Then he didn't have it. And, I'm not telling tales out of school with that. He'll admit it himself. He was a bit of a mess for a while, but he's a real sharp mind, and he's a guy that should be involved creatively with one of the major companies. Yeah. I don't think he can go physically anymore. anywhere, if at all, because he hurt himself a lot over the years. But he's a great mind and a super teacher. He's always been a guy who took people under his wing, no matter where he goes. When you see him with his various versions of the flock or the gathering or whatever you want to call them, those are guys he's actually mentoring, behind the scenes and teaching them how to behave, and how to work in the ring and what to do, how to deal with the politics of wrestling and whatnot. But yeah, it was a real highlight of my career was that the feud with Raven and TNA probably lasted 9 months or something, 6 months. I can't remember. It was a good long time. But that's what I felt like I had arrived. I came into my own, where instead of hitting a home run like 1 out of 4 times, 1 out of 5 times, Raven kept me so motivated, and I had to be on my toes. Otherwise he'd walk all over me. He's Raven. I'm not,
Right.
I had to bring my A game. And some of the best promos I ever did, I think, were during that series with Raven. So he was a harsh teacher and a stern master, and just but really a savant, a genius when it comes to wrestling. He's as far as I'm concerned, he kind of put me on the map, and in the larger picture, to where instead of being a footnote in most wrestling reports of the week, I was actually talked about. He gave me an opportunity to show off.
Yeah, well, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because one of the things I wanted to ask you about, of course, was your time in TNA did feel like, obviously there's great stuff in Smoky Mountain and WCW and ECW, but I feel like in TNA you really did get more of a spotlight. You really did get a chance to just to work at your highest level, and not just with Raven. I mean, the stuff you did with like Abyss and Sting. So it's interesting because, as fans, obviously reading things and hearing things about that company in that particular period of time, there's a lot of stuff that you hear about things were not run, right, or whatever. But it seems like you did all right. You had a good time. Can you talk a little bit about your experience? Because again, you're working on top in the main event with Abyss and Sting and that sort of stuff, and just how working for TNA was for you.
Well, when they first started, I actually thought this was going to be a quick money mark, hit and run type of thing. To me, when I first went there, it was, hey, I'm going to get to party with the boys again. This is going to last about a month, and then they're going to run out of money. And actually, that's almost what happened a month later, but before Panda Energy stepped in. TNA was real disorganized at first. They were throwing a lot of things at the wall trying to see what would stick. Some of it was really good. Some of it was really bad. But once they got their feet beneath them, or got steady, they started turning out a really good product. And like when they had me with the New Church, which had a rotating cast of members, but the cornerstone was always Wolfie D as Slash. What a great guy he is. It's a ring general, super guy. He and Harris had a great series. I mean, he and Brian Lee had a great series of matches with Chris Harris and James Storm, the America's Most Wanted.
Yeah.
Some of those were just amazing. We had a pretty long feud with them. Then I came back and I did the thing with Raven, and that was more about me versus Raven personally. The stuff with Abyss, I'd been gone for like a year and a half. They brought me back with Abyss. That was a super strong run.
Yeah.
It was a perfect pairing of a monster who shouldn't speak, with a creepy mouthpiece. And again, all that stuff took me to a completely different level. So even though a lot of it I thought was goofy, and the business about me being his father and getting shot and whatnot, I thought was kind of stupid and shouldn't happen. But if I had acted that way on TV about it, which you will see people do on TV sometimes, if they don't like the material they're given, they look like they're just phoning it in, or making fun of it. I mean, how many times in my life have an opportunity Sting and Tom? This is me and Sting. Us two. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. You don't screw that up by blowing it off or complaining to the office. So I just dug my heels in and tried to really, instead of coming to work pissed off, I would come in and shake hands, go, what are we going to do today? And I would just try to make it as real to me as I could, So, the wrestling business, I've been in it long enough that it's a completely different beast than what I got into.
Yeah.
It's really, if you look at a match from 1989 and look at a match from 2022, they bear no resemblance to each other, almost at all. But it's kind of like the frog being in a pot of boiling water. You don't know it's getting hot, so it's too late. So I look around, I go, man, all this has happened around me slowly without me really noticing it. Not a jarring big change, but TNA was or Impact as they're known now. They were undergoing a lot of growth, a lot of changing, and trying to see what happened. But when they were on Spike TV, that was a hell of a roster they had there.
Without a doubt.
I mean, the pay-per-views every bit as good, if not better, on a consistent basis than McMahon's were in WWE. The women's division at that time. In WWE, in TNA, WWE couldn't touch it. I mean, WWE had pretty girls, but they had girls who did cat fights. Dutch Mantel started taking the girls real seriously, the knockouts, I guess he called them. And he started building a really strong women's division, which I think is somewhat responsible for the explosion of women wrestling that we've had in recent years. Impact, and they're still around.
Right.
Impact will always be. They've had their ups and downs. They've avoided death a few times. It's like a cockroach. You can't, they'll survive a nuclear explosion. And they've got a real good product going on right now too. There's more people need to see it, and it's on Access TV. But that's the TNA was, had a great run. Frustrating at times, some of the stupid stuff they would do back in the day, depending on who was running it or who was booking it. But they're still around today, and they're worth watching.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think that luckily they've gotten a little bit more visibility over the past year or so. But I hope that that they can continue kind of the string of successes that they've had, because they're working with great talent and bringing people along as well. And their women's division, has definitely always been something pretty strong. You got to work with, of course, like Rosemary and Sue Young and Allie, and I think that being here in Chicago, I've seen a lot of Shimmer shows and sort of getting to see Rosemary / Courtney Rush and kind of her career trajectory. So I'm interested, working with them, being a part of that storyline. You fit so well into it. What did you think of all that?
If you would have asked me before I did it, I would have probably, if I would have known what it was, I probably would have said no. We went to go film that first segment in a haunted house here in Orlando. I thought it was going to be like the Boiler Room match. I thought they were just going to have a hardcore match in a haunted house, right? Yeah. And I looked out the corner of my eye, and this girl, one of Sue Young's bride, comes running at another one with a bloody hatchet, and I was like, I didn't just see that, did I? Yeah. What the hell have they got me booked here for? But again, it was another one of those things where I was like, okay, well, one thing I haven't been able to do in my trajectory over the years is true sports entertainment. The cinematic type of stuff that you can see that's been in vogue in recent years. So I figured, well, let's give that a shot too. And to some degree, if you do it right, it gives you a sizzle reel for acting as opposed to just cutting wrestling promos. And that's another one of those things where you have to, those segments aren't wrestling.
Right.
They're little movies. What they are. So I gauged them on that. Man, I love working with those girls. They're all talented as hell, and they're fun. And I have nothing but time for Rosemary. She is a great character. Totally committed 100% to her presentation. She will not won't break character, and she doesn't care. She keeps that brand strong. and you know, I always see her. She's always brainstorming and always writing little ideas down in her book. And it's been a real pleasure working with her and Sue and Kaya, all of them. Real great bunch of girls here.
So a couple more questions I want to ask you real quick before we go. You participated in ECW One Night Stand in 2005,
yeah,
the reunion show, and obviously, you know, I wasn't there in person, but seeing it on video and rewatching it, I mean, the atmosphere was just incredible. And it feels like, and everything that I've read about it, it feels like it was a genuine case of like WWE just saying like, just do your thing, just you know, telling Paulie, just go out there and do your thing, you know. And
here,
I'm curious if that felt like that to you, and you know, what your experience was on the show.
You know, they basically stayed out of the way, except they obviously had to insert some WWE people into it. But no, it was a great nostalgia fest. The crowd was insane, and it was funny watching Vince and Johnny Ace backstage. They didn't know what the hell ECW was. They didn't understand it, but you could see the money signs go off in Vince's eyes when he saw Sandman do his entrance. You know what I mean? They were like, what? I mean, you could see them kind of rolling their eyes at first, like who's this gang of ragamuffins, you know? Sure. But when they saw the reaction those people got, and the way the love that the crowd actually had for those performers that they had not seen in a few years at that time, you could see his wheels returning, and that obviously led to them starting the rebirth of ECW, which they completely screwed up. But yeah, it was also my first time, so I got to say, you know, I worked for WWE for 2 days. I'll say this. Totally first class. You know, I mean, if you're divorced from any politics or drama, you couldn't ask for a better run show. You know, people chasing you down to give you money. Oh, you didn't get your draw money. Here, let me, you know, it was just a lot of fun. A super experience.
So, kind of to wrap up, just most recently, you know, we saw you in NWA, and then, you know, right before that, working with AEW. I mean, you've really, literally, at this point, pretty much worked everywhere that one could work. So, talk a little about what you're doing today and your work with NWA.
Yeah, I'm in NWA, Billy Corgan's promotion, which airs on Fight Network. I believe you can get a subscription for it for like $4.99 a month, and that gives you access to their entire library back over the years. They've got a really strong. They also have a show that airs on YouTube on Saturday mornings, I believe, at noon perhaps, called NWA USA. They've got a great roster. Billy Corgan's very passionate about the product. We have wrestlers that look like wrestlers. You know, that's not a room full of guys that are 5'6" and 180 pounds. You know, you've got grown men with muscles in the locker room. The female division in there is super strong. Billy's a smart businessman, so he's not going to piss all of his money out. You know, piss his money away up front. You know, he's not going to go try to get in the Monday Night Wars or anything like some other people did and lost everything. But he believes in the streaming platform being the future of where wrestling is going to be going. So he's dedicated to that. It's been a joy being there. They've had me with a guy named Judas who wrestled as Michael Judas in the Southern Indies before there. And he's a super talented, big tough guy. They've also had me recently paired with Sal Renaro and Gags the Gimp. Dude, Gags the Gimp is one of those another happy accident. When this was presented to me, I thought, how on earth is this going to work?
Yeah.
And man, we're going to wind up having to turn in baby face because the crowd loves it. You know, it's such a preposterous, a guy in a gimp outfit with the zipper mask and all that.
Yeah.
The crowd loves it. So I go there, I guess every 2.5 months or so. We go and we tape 4 to 6 to 8 weeks of TV, depending on depending on what they have scheduled there. But I really enjoyed that. That's also a throwback. It has a throwback feel to it. It looks, if you haven't seen it, it looks like the old WTCG studios or TBS studios, Gordon Soley, Georgia Championship Wrestling days.
Yeah.
They've got the set dressed the same way. And everything's done live there. So promos are done pretty much in one take. You know, they're not overproduced. So you have to be thinking, because if you screw up, you know, you flubbed it, you got to keep going, because they're not editing it out. So that's been fun. That's kind of like working without a net, you know? And it's fun because, you know, in other places, if they give you too long to sit and think about your material, I'll have a tendency to overdo it, and it might not come out sounding as organic. Billy will call me into the room and say, okay, here's your promo. Your guy's going against whatever, Mr. X, and there might be one line that's the bullet point of the whole promo. Yeah. And he just says, go. And it's like, pop a wheelie and take off and hope you land on the right spot. But I've really enjoyed NWA. They have a great product, great roster. And I strongly suggest that wrestling fans look it up. I think you'll be pleased.
Yeah, you know, we had the opportunity to talk to Austin Idol last year, and of course he was talking a lot about his, you know, working with NWA and everything. And I know that we've got fans of the product, and we've been fortunate enough to sign some of the wrestlers that work for NWA and, you know, have them in the game. And I'm never going to think more wrestling is a bad thing. You know what I mean? I think that there's space at the table for everybody, and I'm so glad that we've got, you know, AEW and NWA and Impact around today, because I think that, you know, the fact is that if all we had was WWE, we'd be a lot poorer for it, you know, as wrestling fans.
Oh, yeah.
You know, one last question, and then we want to share the artwork with you. You know, recently the Dark Side of the Ring episode, I guess not recently, it's been a little bit now, but
September.
About Canyon aired, and of course you were a huge part of that. And hopefully you don't mind me asking this, but there's been some controversy about the show in general, about, you know, things being taken out of context and the editing of comments and stuff. And I'm curious because I thought you brought a lot to the table, and I ended up enjoying that episode as much as one can enjoy a story like that. And I'm just curious about your experience with that, and if you felt like you were represented fairly, and if you thought, more importantly, Canyon was represented fairly.
Yeah, I think he was represented fairly. Those guys were a joy to work with. And I watched that show a lot. Yeah. You know, it was like 9 months between when we filmed it or when they interviewed us and it came out, but they interviewed me for 3.5 hours. They interviewed Dallas Page for like 3 hours. Everybody was talked to for like 3 hours at least. So you've got probably, let's say, at least 20 hours of footage that they have to go through to build. They've got 48 minutes once commercials are taken in to tell us a person's life story. So there are things that have to be on there was a lot left on the cutting room floor. I mean, I wish they had. One criticism I've gotten from people about it is they thought that I made Canyon sound bad, because they also didn't get to hear, you know, the other hour and a half of wonderful things about him. But I wasn't talking about him being a bad person. Yeah. And my problems with him actually lasted from March of '97 till about October of '97 in WCW. And then we never had a problem again. But, you know, he was dealing with his own stuff. And, you know, I wanted to be a good friend. I didn't want, I wasn't going to stooge him off. I mean, I'm going to get fired, you know, for an unsafe work environment. The guy who put me on a national stage, he was my friend, you know. But I don't think they could have told that story and hit all the points and edited it any differently than they did. I thought they did a great job editing it. One thing which I brought up earlier, people thought that the show was out of sync because they talked about the Blood Runs Cold push being killed by the NWO and saying that the NWO was there before Blood Runs Cold. Well, on TV they were. Blood Runs Cold was in the works, and the guys were rehearsing well before NWO came along. But I mean, that's a kind of, does it change the the flow of the story, to not go into minutia when you have to leave things out. You know, I mean, it'll take me a minute and a half to explain that. That's a lot of TV time,
Right.
you know?
Right.
So there were a couple things where people thought they got the editing wrong, but they weren't. There's just not time to go into it. But I hope that, you know, when people see it, that they realize that Canyon was a guy, you know, he loved the wrestling business, and he was constantly giving back to it. Constantly, he wanted to help guys get an opportunity. You know, he was all about helping younger guys get an opportunity, and you know, he's just sorely missed. But I enjoyed the episode. You know, it can make me well up some tears. You know, depending on how much I've had to drink when I see it. But you know, but I think it's an accurate testament. I mean, I can't tell you what other episodes about other people have been like.
Of course.
I spoke to most everybody that was interviewed on it. And yeah, you have to leave things on the cutting room floor. There's just not, you know, and they told me that they might one day do an extended, like a Blu-ray set or something where they have all the footage in it, which I think would be great, because I'd love for people to hear all of the great stuff that Canyon did, and not just about him having mental illnesses or not about being a closeted gay, because there was a lot more to it than that. You know, a lot more to it.
Yeah, I mean, he was an incredible innovator, and I think was an incredible personality, and the Dark Side of the Ring episode certainly gave us a window into aspects of his life, and from from my part, for whatever it's worth, I never got the impression that you were just telling bad things about him. I thought that the stories reflected the friendship, because you don't go through that type of stuff with somebody if you're not close to them. You don't continue to have that kind of relationship with somebody if you're not close to them after the type of stuff that you two shared. So I personally didn't get that impression, for whatever it's worth. But I thank you so much. This has been such a pleasure.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and we want to show you before you go here. We want to show you your card art for the James Mitchell card that was released just a couple months ago, actually.
We're getting some copies out to him.
And we're going to be sending some copies out to you, of course, for your own personal use. But here is the artwork for the card.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's a great card, and it pairs up nicely, of course, with the Prince Karis card. But you can use it with anybody, which our game fans
That's
have already
super.
done. So, yeah.
Karis. Who was the artist on this?
His name is Warner Meek.
Oh. Warner Meek. He did both of them. Yeah.
Yep, he did both of them. He's our kind of our lead artist in all of our Legends of Wrestling products and independent wrestling products that we put out, and he's great. We've worked with him, and he does commissions. So if you want some different art, hit him up.
And so the other side of that would have like the move set or whatever.
Yeah.
That my character can do.
Exactly. And so your card has the opportunity to get involved in the match, as from a managerial perspective, and then the Prince Karis card, for instance, will have each of the moves that he does, and comeback stuff and defensive situations as well. So it's cool.
If you're playing a wrestler, do you have to hit a certain roll number on the roll to use the manager card?
No, the nice thing is that it's optional. So it's one of those things that if you're playing the game, because the nice thing is it's got a solitary component to it. You can play it by yourself. You don't have to just play against other people. But there are situations that occur. Like if a match goes out of the ring, for instance, or if there's a pinfall attempt by another wrestler, you can have the choice to involve the manager in the match. So you get a lot of power of choice throughout the course of the game, which is cool. We'll make sure to send you, of course, a rule book and a set so that you've got all the
oh yeah, I'd love that, man.
Yeah,
that would be super.
Yeah.
It'd be cool to get another version of you in your current look on the scene today. That would be pretty neat to have.
Well, hey, I consider this your permission.
Okay, well, we'll definitely be doing that.
This is your verbal release.
Oh well, thank you so much for that.
I mean, look, I am very flattered to be in that. To me as a kid who grew up, loving this stuff, and when I was a kid, there wasn't no wrestling merchandise. You had to take them. You had to take the Mego dolls and pretend they were the wrestlers. So yeah, anytime anything like this comes out, I'm just very flattered and honored to, that somebody thinks enough of me to actually sell merchandise, with my ugly mug on it. So I do appreciate it.
Yeah, well, one of our missions, especially with the Legends of Wrestling line, is to pay tribute and honor the names in the history of the business. It's something that we're very passionate about, and we even have a relationship with the Trago Synthes Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame in Waterloo, Iowa, and that we try to align that mission with, because it's important. It's important that nobody gets left behind or forgotten. And
right.
Somebody even mentioned in the chat about trying to get a canyon into the game, for instance, and just we want to be able to honor people, and we even do charity auctions, for instance, for the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame, and I think you heard people talking about that prior to starting the interview. We've raised $11,000 this year, which is just awesome. I'm so thrilled with what we've been able to do. So we want everybody in the game. We want to be able to have cards for everybody. We want everybody that is a part of the game to have their cards so they can use as merch or whatever, do whatever they want with them. But thank you for being a part of the game. Thank you for being a part of the convention today. And before you go, if there's anything else, obviously you talked about NWA, but if there's anything else you want to plug, if there's anywhere that people can find you, reach out to you, the floor is yours, sir.
You can find me on Twitter, handle @MinisterReal. And I'm on Facebook. There are a couple of fake accounts, but mine, if it's the picture of me, I think it's James Mitchell .731, maybe might be the actual address. But if you look up James Mitchell on Facebook, if you find the one with the bald head doing this as the avatar or whatever, that would be mine. There are some fake ones, but you can hit me up there. From time to time, I have merch available that I just actually had some, what do you call them? Like a voodoo doll, throw pillows. A company called Cheapo Grosso put those out. Those are available on Etsy at cheapogrosso.com. But that's about it. So I hope to be speaking to you guys soon, and I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, we would love to talk to you again. And again, thank you so much for joining us. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend, and take care of yourself. Thank you again for being a part of the game.
May all of your stains be large ones. We'll see you. Bye-bye.
Well, that was the Father James Mitchell interview from Galacticon, and again, what a great time that was. I really enjoyed talking to him. I tried to ask questions that I didn't necessarily think that he'd been asked a lot lately. Even when it came to Canyon stuff, he had just participated in that Dark Side of the Ring not that long ago, which had aired, so I didn't necessarily want to talk too much about that, rehash that, because I figure that stuff's out there. So I tried to kind of ask stuff that maybe he hadn't had a chance to talk about quite as much recently. Hopefully that was mission accomplished, and people enjoyed that interview. I know anytime I get the opportunity to talk to these folks, I always feel really lucky, and James Mitchell was no exception. Mike, thoughts on James Mitchell?
I mean, it was kind of cool that he was like I don't know where he was exactly, but it was kind of cool. And I mean, you could tell his passion for the business and all the stories he's got. It's a neat interview, and I thought you did a good job, Sam. And I'm just glad that people had the opportunity to see it at Galacticon, and now I'm glad to give them another chance. For those who maybe were doing other things, missed part of it, or just wanted to hear it again. I think it's great that we're able to provide that content to them this week.
Yeah, we don't want anybody to get left behind or forgotten. And yeah, it's one of those things that at any time, we wrap up one of these interviews, there's always more, that you wanted to ask or you wanted to talk about. And hopefully we'll get the opportunity to do that with him again down the road. He seemed open to that, and certainly was excited to see his card art as well, wasn't he, Todd?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, definitely like that. And I also mentioned, maybe we need something with the new look, and he'd be like, all right, let's do it. And I'm like, okay. So maybe we'll have to look for an opportunity to do that in the future. What a great guy. I was in the middle of Galacticon, so I was running back and forth a little bit, so I missed some of the good portions of it. But the parts I did listen to were great, and I look forward to listening to the rest of it this week.
Yeah. And he just, like you said, such a great personality, was totally open. Didn't seem like there was anything that was, off limits. And I think we strayed away from getting maybe as risque as he is capable of for the most part, but it was a heck of a lot of fun. And
can I just say I'm disappointed though, Sam? I'm disappointed Todd broke kayfabe. Like he acted like he didn't just listen to that interview, right? Like, I mean, come on. Kayfabe, Todd. Kayfabe.
We gotta pretend that that we actually listened along. That this isn't just like
that's right.
That this isn't just like 10 seconds after we cut to the interview. Well, we hope you enjoyed that. And again, one of the cool things about the cons that we have, and anytime we have special guests, is that the podcast gives us an opportunity to run those back. So if you missed out on it, you get to see it. Of course, it's always a lot of fun to be able to participate, live while it's happening. You get the opportunity to throw some questions at us, which we had a few that we fielded from the audience, but most of them, I just kind of ran with my own line of questioning. But it's always great anytime we get promoters throwing in their questions as well. So who knows who's going to be next, but whoever it is, you can obviously attend live. And if you miss out, we will certainly try to bring it to you on the podcast so you don't miss out completely. Speaking of missing out, there are some people that we don't want to miss out on this week that we wanted to give some shout outs to. So Todd, take it away.
Well, one person I definitely want to give a shout out to is promoter Sean Ryan, who sent over to us something he's been working on for quite a while. And it's very, very impressive. His Champions of the Galaxy Encyclopedia. This thing blew all of us away.
Yeah, incredible work.
Yeah, so I don't know. I forget how many pages how many hundreds of pages it was, but like categorized like every character of every set across, early classics, the GWF, any of the offshoot ones, that were mainline releases from Phil Singer Games. He hit everything into this, and just kind of going deep into the storylines. It was absolutely amazing the way he formatted and everything, and kind of lists of ongoing, teams and tag teams and what wrestler cards are active each year and whatnot. It's just an amazing resource he put together that he shared with Tom and myself. I kind of shared with Sam and Mike, and just really, really blown away by your effort, Sean, if you're listening here. We're going to look to see if there's a way that, we can share that with the rest of the galaxy at one point.
Yeah. Sean definitely gets the no prize for this week. Tom would appreciate that I used that reference. But I am blown away by it, and I haven't gotten super far through it, but I was literally kind of just going page by page. Like I wasn't even jumping around to find like entries for my favorite guys or whatever. I was just going page by page, and it was so cool because one of the things that he did, which I loved, is not only did he chart the early classics wrestlers, but he charted the rosters year by year, which I thought was really cool to do, because obviously that stuff is in the handbook, and there is a spot for it on the boards as well, but it's pretty cool to have that kind of in one document like this. So I enjoyed that, and it's what an incredible piece of work by a fan, so promoter, and I love the idea of trying to find a way to get it into other promoters' hands. Mike, what about you, sir?
Well, on a similar vein, Tom Tutwiler just produced some stuff that he forwarded that is on a really similar vein, and again, just amazing content. So I don't know if we're going to have to find a way to combine these two things or what, but there's just some really great content that people are producing, and you can see how much they love the game, and it's just coming through. And Tom's done this before. This isn't like the first time Tom's stepped up and done some great stuff for the community. So this is a nice little bit of work he's done. So I just wanted to give him a shout out for that.
Yeah, that's very cool. To have these kind of resources, I think, knowing that there's work to be done with, the wiki online, and knowing that we haven't had like a GWF files in a while, and knowing that, obviously all the fan produced content that we get as far as cards and sets and matches and the stuff like the play mats, that Grant I know helped like do some images for and graphics for. And we get a lot of really cool stuff like that, but to have kind of these tomes, I think I think a lot of people would really enjoy them, and obviously kind of in a way it's reminiscent of the Ringside Companion that we just got, and volume 2 of course on the way. To have that at your fingertips, a resource with everything there is really neat. So I wanted to give a quick shout out, and this one is going to be a little bit of a strange one, kind of a bit of, to change of pace. But I have a dear friend of mine who does not play the game. It's just, he kind of was aware of the game, I think peripherally, just because I had it and he'd seen it, when we were in college or whatever. But, he's never picked it up. But he's just one of those people that, he has so much love for his friends that he follows their endeavors, whatever they're doing. So he literally listens to every episode of the podcast, as well as, Fate's Wide Wheel, the Quantum Leap podcast that I do. And just, he's so supportive in that way. And he's an incredibly important person to me. And sadly, this week, his father passed away. And I just was thinking a lot about him. And, by happenstance, I'm going to have the opportunity to attend the services and be there, with him. And I haven't seen him, in quite a while. We just haven't had the opportunity because he lives out in Arizona. But I just wanted to say that, Christopher Redman, should he ever take a step into this community beyond listening to the podcast, he would enrich and enliven the community even more than it already is, because he's an incredible human being. And I, of course, am thinking a lot about him, and I appreciate his support over the years, in not only this endeavor, but all of my endeavors. But the fact that, he listens to a podcast about a game that he doesn't even play, I've always thought is pretty damn cool. And I, again, just really appreciate the support, and I love you dearly, and I know that it's been a tough week, but I'm really looking forward to seeing you this weekend, in spite of the circumstances not being great. So I just wanted to say that, because like I said, he's been an incredibly important part of my life for a while. It's been almost 20 years, I think. So Chris, again, thank you so much, and I'll see you soon. With all of that said, I think we are ready to just wrap things up and get out of here and leave, hopefully, the promoters wanting more for next week. So remember to leave your thoughts about the Fantasy League on the board. Let us know your interest, if you want to participate, if you just want to watch, if you have any thoughts or ideas, opinions, feelings, whatever, share those with us. Thank you to everyone, of course, that did. I know that last week's episode was a little long, but the folks that left comments about the state of the business and kind of their feelings on that, we really appreciate that. Of course, we also appreciate all the other content providers in the Philsinger Games universe, including the Uncharted Territory crew, and Dave Little, and of course Lee Longpree, Mike Delve, and Brock Atkinson with the Facebook series. I think this week they did a video on Bruton Massacre, and they had Kevin and Matt Butcher on for that. I haven't had a chance to listen to it or watch it yet, but I'm looking forward to it, because if somebody's talking about Bruton Massacre, I'm down. Of course, Grant Pachoco as well, with Solo Promoter, and anybody and everybody who's out there rolling the dice, posting on the boards, creating bootlegs, thinking about matches, new rules. I can't wait for us to have a conversation about all the discussion that has happened just recently, even about rules and ideas and house rules that people have been using. I think that'll be a cool chat when we get the chance to. So thank you, of course, promoters, for making this the greatest game in the galaxy. We appreciate you greatly. Mike, any parting thoughts? Uh-oh.
Good night to our friends on the Baltic.
Fantastic. Thank you for not leaving me hanging. Todd, any parting thoughts, sir?
Yeah, just stay tuned. Coming up, we have a lot of ideas on kind of changes for the format of the podcast here. So expect something a little bit different. We've been kind of utilizing our content from Galacticon the last 2 weeks, but I think we're looking at doing some other things in the future, kind of sharing some of our results more often, and maybe even playing a match or two online during the podcast, especially now that we have video with it. I think that'll be a little bit more interesting than trying to do play by play with an online, while we're just in an audio medium. So.
Right. Well, and one of the things just to kind of tease is that, we've been talking about finding ways to integrate things into FTR as well, so that it feels even more like a living, breathing world, beyond just the booklet. And of course, Mike has some exciting stuff, I think, that he wants to share Sintra-wise as well, even if it's just, his results and stuff. So yeah, some cool stuff on the horizon. And I think, we'll look into, continuing to tighten up the show and find ways to, to really kind of like nail down our continuing segments. We haven't done a character spotlight in a while or a legend spotlight in a while, and we've just had so many other things kind of going on. But the opportunity to bring some of those segments back will be a lot of fun as well. So stay tuned, promoters. We just want to continue to get better as we go along and find ways to bring you even more content and learning, not only from the stuff that we're doing, but also from the stuff that everyone else is doing. As Todd mentioned earlier, kind of the inspiration to bring back his decades old idea for the Fantasy League was inspired by the Uncharted Territory crew. So, I think that's one of the coolest things about a community like this. We can learn from each other. We can grow and do new things and take those influences. So, looking forward to that. It should be a lot of fun. But in the meantime, take care of yourselves. Take care of one another. Stay safe out there. And we will be back next week with a brand new episode of Roll Up, the official Phil Singer Games podcast.